Okay, Soraya. So we passed 200 episodes and now we're heading towards 300 with episode 201 here.
And what a way to start, right? The next 100 episodes. This is pretty cool.
Yes. So is this Paisley Underground related or adjacent?
Yes, we'll say it's Paisley adjacent, but there's enough folks involved to say yes, definitely.
I'm kind of given a hint here place by strategically placing some records up here up front, but
I'd say your shirt is also pretty representative.
indeed.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell our listeners what we'll be talking about today?
Yeah, today we're really fortunate to have our guest host, Ronnie Barnett,
Yes.
and in to talk with Andrew Reich about a documentary about Red Cross.
Yes, Born Innocent, something that a documentary that the three of us have all watched. And I'll probably bring this up later, but one thing I think is pretty interesting to me about the three of us watching this, I think there's three levels of knowledge here, right? Because
Yeah,
Ronnie, being a member of the Muffs, had a definite connection with Red Cross. In fact, they did some projects together, interviews and whatnot.
right.
And so his knowledge is very high. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm a fan of the band, as you are, and I read all the credits and all that stuff. But a lot of the stuff that was in the documentary was new to me. And I think your knowledge is much less, right? I mean, you're a fan
Oh
of the
yeah.
band, you like the band for sure,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of stuff that came out in this documentary was very new to you.
I think
So,
I've never dug into the story, it just hasn't happened. And so this documentary was a great way for me to get up to speed and to know a lot of the foundational things about how the band got formed and some of the things that really helped them evolve along the way. And so I'm really looking forward to this discussion because for those of you who maybe are like me and kind of newbies to story, this is an amazing story to tell. And it's really compelling. And I think the documentary does a really good job of it. And I mean, come on, Jeff, when your starting point is a place called Hawthorne, California, the Liverpool of the Pacific, as
yes.
it's referred to, um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you know that you're in for a good time.
Indeed. That was a great quote that's in the documentary as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can learn some more about how Andrew and the team put this whole thing together because
Yeah.
it's an amazing documentary.
It's really well done and it tells a very good story. And it's set to launch for worldwide release. So it'll be accessible through, I'm going to assume, a number of platforms. So, Jeff, let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff,
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
a podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, a grooviar.
Let's get groovy. Yes, you did. All right, Soraya, before we get started with the interview, here we are on our episode number 201. And I wanted to ask you, Soraya, because I know you take notes and you keep track of stuff. On our first 200 episodes, how many Emmy Award winners have we had on the show?
I think we've had zero.
Zero until now. So we have an Emmy Award winner on the show. Andrew, welcome to the show. And congratulations, a little bit late on your 2002 Emmy Award for your work on
Thank
Friends.
you. I'm still accepting congratulations, so thank you.
We're a little bit late on that. Um, and I did want to tell you, Andrew, that the three of us have all recently seen the Born Innocent, the Red Cross Story documentary, and we all love it. And we're coming from different levels of knowledge. Ronnie, of course, being the expert, with the Muffs having a great relationship with the Red Cross over the years. I'm a fan of the band. I have all their albums, and I know everything that's in the credits. But other than that, I don't know a whole lot about the story. And Soraya was telling us offline earlier that a lot of this information is totally new to her, although she did see Spirit of 76 in the theater. So
Okay.
So we're all coming from different levels of knowledge, and I think we all agree that the documentary is extremely well done.
Oh,
Well, that
thank you. Uh, I really did set out to make a movie that works for people that had never heard of Red Cross at all. So, and that, also works for the fans, of course, but I just wanted to make sure that you could come into it with any level of Red Cross knowledge and enjoy it.
I was
I
going to say the fact that the way Jeff laid it out with all three of us, the fact that we all three love it, uh, is testament to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Indeed.
that makes me very happy.
So Andrew, the obvious question is, how did this whole project get started, or how did you get pulled into Born Innocent, the Red Cross Story documentary?
I mean, I pulled myself into it. Geez, no, certainly no one pulled me into it. Well, I don't know where to start. I mean, I guess we've got some time, right? I can tell the long version.
Yep.
I mean, the story starts. So I grew up in New Jersey, and you know, around seventh or eighth grade. So talking like 82, 81, 82. I had the age-old story of a cool older sister who was into punk rock, and I just found her Sex Pistols and Clash and Ramones records and just got head over heels, in love with all that stuff, and quickly kind of became this hardcore kid going to CBGB's matinees and, very into that New Jersey, like Adrenaline OD, and New York Agnostic Front kind of hardcore scene. Um, and there was one other punk kid at my high school, and we realized like if we got our FCC licenses, the high school that we went to, the Morristown High, had a radio station, and if we could get radio shows, we could play this music, which would be cool because no one was, not many people were playing it, and we could get free records. That was
Oh,
just like, we have a radio show, we can make our playlist, we send it to every label we find at Maximum Rock and Roll and Flipside, and so that's what we did. We both had these radio shows, and we just started like sending out, on the WJSV stationary playlist to every label, and free records started to come in. It was amazing. And we got a package in 1984 from Gasatanka Records,
oh,
and it was White Flag, Third Strike, and Teen Babes from Monsanto by Red Cross.
nice.
And I think I was aware, I probably knew Annette's Got the Hits. I didn't own Born Innocent, the second record, and I wasn't that like really aware of them, but I listened to that record and it just blew me away. Like I loved that record. It's all covers pretty much. I didn't really know any of those originals. I don't think I'd heard Deuce by Kiss until I heard Red Cross's version, but I just
Wow.
loved that record so much. And it's such an odd, if you're coming from this like punk and hardcore place, and you're hearing them do cover the Shangri-Las and cover the song from Bewitched that you like vaguely remember from watching Bewitched reruns, but it's
Yes.
all kind of heavy and it's all kind of like coming from this punk place, but it's like it's different, and it had this sort of mysterious quality, and I just loved it, and it made me want to go and find the original. It just sort of opened a lot of doors musically for me, and it just made me a lifelong Red Cross fan. And so every new I was in college when Neurotica came out, and that
Wait,
record,
Andrew, one second. What'd you think of the White Flag record?
White Flag record, solid, good,
Okay.
decent, good record. Hasn't really like had the same impact on me. There are some. There's some good songs. What irons will shackle, White Flag shall set free. I mean, it's still words. It's words to live by. I still think that.
Yeah.
I still think about that every day when I look at those words tattooed on my forearm. But so Neurotica just also blew. I mean, that just played the shit out of that, and in my college dorm room, we just played that over and over again. And so I just like they kept changing, and I just went with it every step of the way. Maybe not Third Eye as much, but I've grown to love that record. Maybe I didn't love it at the time so much as Ronnie says in the movie, that it kind of.
Can I just clarify? Like, I have that quote in the film, and I go on to say, but I really love Third Eye.
Yeah, but as a director, I can make you mean
No,
anything I want.
whatever gets me the screen time, Andrew. That's fine. It's fine with me. Go ahead.
Um, And so I didn't get to see the band until I moved to LA I moved out to LA in 1990, and then I would see them whenever I could. And then I really fell in love with this other band called the Muffs, who I saw probably even way more than I ever saw Red Cross because there were more opportunities to see the Muffs. Um, and so just always fascinated by Jeff and Steve, and just felt they were, I love a lot of bands, but there's something about them. And I listened to Steve. So now fast forward to like 10 years ago. I was listening to Steve McDonald on the Turned Out a Punk podcast that Damian Abraham from Fucked Up does. And Steve told a story that I'd never heard about this horrible, crazy story from his childhood that what I'm talking about from having seen the movie. I don't want to give away too much. And I heard that, and I just was telling my wife about it and just saying, like, on top of all these other things that are so fascinating about this band, then there's this story. Like, someone needs to make a documentary about this band. And she said, well, why don't you do it? And those were sort of the fateful words. I just started thinking about it, and I was just like, you know what? I think, like, I know this band well. I kind of know the world well. I know how to tell. I've been a writer for however 25 years. Like, I haven't made a documentary, but I had this feeling that I could do it. And I had a mutual friend, a friend of mine who's friends with Steve. And I said, will you just connect us and let me just sort of pitch this idea to Steve and Jeff? And so they agreed. They came to this office where, you guys can see, but I have this like wall of like record albums behind me that I switch around a lot. But they came here. It's at the Farmers Market at 3rd and Fairfax in LA. And I think they like that because the Farmers Market is a very special place to them. They spent a lot of time here. And they came up and they were looking at the records on the wall. And at that point, I had this I had the Lolita, the French pressing of LA Explosion by the Last. And Jeff saw that and was just, I don't think he'd seen that version. It's got a different cover. And I think he was like, I think in that moment he decided, okay, I think I'll give this guy a chance. He never said that exactly, but I feel like maybe that was one of the things. And then I just sort of talked to them. I was just like, I've been a fan for so long. I just want to tell your story. And Steve said, you're not going to make it Anvil, are you?
Ronnie loves that documentary.
Favorite.
Well, it's
You
it's
probably
one
do
of the
too, Andrew. Yeah.
It's one of the best music documentaries ever, really. But I knew what he was talking about. You're sort of laughing at Anvil in that movie, and
Until you're not, though. You know what I mean? It starts off that way, but it can't help but kind of start off that way. But then you're not.
But then you're not, and it's true, you're not. But it still is. I can see how, from Steve's point of view, that feels like they're the butt of the joke for at least a lot of it. And I was just like, I don't even know how you'd make Anvil about Red Cross because you've always been cool. Like, who's cooler than Red Cross? So, I could set his mind at ease about that. And then, that was like 9, 10 years ago. I don't know. So it started, and then I just had to learn how to make a documentary, which was a real trial and error kind of thing.
Right. Had you made other films that weren't documentaries? Oh, okay.
No.
Wow.
No, I mean, I've just written like dick jokes for sitcoms, I had no qualifications for this.
Well, you have us fooled. It certainly turned out great. So then you did a crowdfunding project?
We did a Kickstarter. So what happened was it was like, okay, the guy said, and they had been burned, by the way. I don't know how, there was a previous aborted Red Cross documentary project that I think they were kind of like, a little gun shy because that one had fallen apart. But they said, okay, we're going to trust you. They signed this paper, and then we started shooting some stuff. Like, things came up. Like, they did this. There was a reunion of the very original, Red Cross. I don't even cover this in the movie, but they were called the Tourists before they were called Red Cross. And that lineup, which was John Stilo, the drummer, Greg Hetson, Jeff and Steve, that lineup was reuniting to do a benefit for Des Cadena from Black Flag, DC3, Misfits, and so it was like, oh my God, this is an incredible opportunity. We got to film this, and so we filmed that. And there's there's interview material from that rehearsal that's in the movie, and we filmed the show that they did. And so we filmed that, and then like they did a show at the Echoplex, and we shot that and did a little interviewing then. And then I was just doing it very piecemeal because I was also running a show and a TV show, and but it was happening kind of just here and there, like, and it kind of, at a certain point I was like, at this rate it's going to take like 30 years to make this movie. So I had to get serious. I thought, all right, I'm going to do a Kickstarter, and if I raise the money, I'll take in people's money, and that'll really be the incentive to like get serious about doing this. And we did this Kickstarter, we did raise the money, and that money sort of covered production of all the interviews with folks like Ronnie and all the other people in the in the film. And I actually finished that right before COVID hit. Like, I remember the last interview I think I did it in that initial phase was with Mark Arm and Steve Turner from Mudhoney, and it was the kind of thing where we were like, do we shake hands? Do we bump elbows? Ha ha ha. We're getting on the plane going back to Seattle, which was like the epicenter. But it was like right before everything kind of shut down. And then, COVID sort of slowed things down for various reasons. But during that time was transcribing these hundreds of hours of interviews and trying to put this thing together. The band's been together for 45 years, and they're still going strong, right? So there's no like definitive end point where like John Bonham dies and that's the end or whatever it is. It's just like, so it's hard to shape this into a 90-minute movie, and it took a lot of trying and taking this huge thing and just for me just saying like, okay, what here is only interesting to a hardcore fan, and that stuff, let's cut it. Let's just cut. My editor and I hired this great editor, Aaron Elders, who was a music guy. He was in a band called Maps and Atlases. He cut the Jawbreaker documentary, which I thought was a good doc, but he didn't know Red Cross, and I was like, this is perfect. Like, I wanted someone who I didn't have to say, Black Flag was a punk rock group from Hermosa Beach that, I didn't have to like do the Wikipedia entry. Like, they had a general understanding of the world that we're in, but didn't know Red Cross, so that they could be the kind of gut check where I'm like, is this interesting to you? And he'd be like, it's kind of in the weeds. I'm like, it's cut. Forget it. It's out. Like, we just want all gold. Everything else is going to be a DVD like special feature. Like, this movie has to work for man, just man or woman off the street coming in. And that was just a lot of cutting and honing and, and just figuring out. I hadn't done it. But I'll say this though, like, doing comedy, first of all, Jeff and Steve, because they're hilarious people. They're so funny. So I knew the movie was going to be funny, which was another reason I thought it could really be good. And I've been in the editing room cutting comedy for decades. Like, when you're running a show, you sit, and there's a lot of just sitting there and going like, snapping your fingers and saying like, right there, like, if it's a frame longer or shorter, the joke's not going to land. Like, this is the timing. I feel it. You have to cut right there. And I found it was kind of the same cutting this documentary. There's just that same comic timing. Sometimes it's just like, we cut to this photo right now and we're going to get a laugh. And whatever. I'm a comedy whore. Like, I wanted to get laughs. I wanted the movie to be funny. Not that you're laughing ever at them, but I just knew it could be funny. And so that comic timing that I had learned in sitcoms, like, did apply. That was one skill that I think did apply to making this.
Nice.
Yeah, I recommend seeing this film in a theater with an audience, because it does get the laughs.
Yeah.
But my favorite is the David Cassidy bit. Not to give anything away, but yeah.
I know. I love that. I love that too. We should cover, by the way, since we're talking about Friends, that I am responsible for putting the Muff sticker in Chandler and Joey's
I didn't want to bring it
apartment.
up, but yes. Did you guys, Jeff and Soraya, did you know that?
No.
Something I didn't know until about a couple of years ago. Someone a fan of ours spotted it in the background. I used to watch Friends. I love Friends. I don't watch reruns, but you know what I'm saying. I never noticed it. No one ever brought it up.
Oh, you never noticed it during the first initial
Never
run of the
noticed
show?
it. No one ever said anything.
It's there for a lot of episodes. Yeah, I just was hanging out, and I just had a buff sticker, and I was just like dink, and no one ever like no, set deck never like bothered me about it. They just left it up there.
So great. What season is that? Just so we can
God,
know.
I'm really, I wish I knew. I don't know when that
Okay.
would have been.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some fan out there that could tell you
Well,
exactly
people
which
look for it. Yeah,
episodes.
yeah. No, thank God a
But
fan told me because you didn't bring it up to me, Andrew, when we met. So
no, I
um
didn't. But yeah, I mean, I was just like such a massive Muffs fan. I mean,
aw.
just um, from Raji's, from those Raji's days, I feel like I was seeing when Chris Crass was on drum, like I was seeing you guys from like very, very
Well, we
early
can
on.
announce that Andrew's going to do the Muffs documentary next. Here. So we
They've
had the
all
aborted stab. Somebody tried to a stab at it thing happen too. So
Yeah, you see, I mean, you get why some of these things don't go the distance because it's so hard. I'm still working so hard on this thing,
yeah,
just like, do I have an appearance release for every single person? Do I have a license for every photograph and bit of footage? I mean,
right.
and I have this spreadsheet that's like 600 items long of like all the
wow.
archival stuff and like it's all the music. I mean, there's so much bookkeeping that has to be done to like get this thing like ready to be out in the world. It's just an unbelievable amount of work. I think music documentaries in particular are hard because you you have to become this expert in fair use because if you were paying to license every song in the thing, it would just be millions and millions of dollars. And so it's just like there's just tricks to how you make things fair use, and it's just a tremendous amount of work. I really have newfound respect for anyone who finishes one of these things.
Right. I mean, you have a clip from the Johnny Carson show, you
Yeah,
know? I mean,
yeah.
that's incredible. Now, is this the final cut?
Well, I don't know. It's I've changed a little bit since you saw it, like, Ronnie, the last time you saw it, which was at Don't Knock the Rock, where you
It
were at the,
was,
yeah.
yes.
So I did add a little bit about Eddie Kurtzel, who, was their guitar player for the
Yeah.
Bass Shifter and Show World Tour. So there's a little section about him and a few other things, small things that you probably wouldn't notice, but here and there. And some of those are sort of because of licensing, but it's basically the same film that you saw.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I mean, we're gearing towards an actual release.
The actual release, yes, yeah, early December, December 5th. I don't know when you're dropping this episode, so it hasn't been officially announced. So I don't know
Yeah,
if I.
we can do it whenever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
December 5th at the Chinese theaters will be the LA screening, and then there's a whole bunch that we're just booking now, and it's so cool to see. There's just like you just keep adding screenings and I just want to spread the gospel. I just want to, it was always like it was just always about like making them new fans. Like I just always felt like Red Cross should be playing bigger venues. Like this is crazy. This is, this whole cult band thing. I'm like, yeah, they guess they're a cult band, but not because their music is inaccessible.
Mm-mm.
Like their music's not obscure and like for just only music nerds. It's so joyful and
Yeah.
catchy and great. It's got everything you love about rock and roll if you're a rock and roll fan. It's not like the birthday party, I mean? This is like you
Yes.
understand
Yes.
why that's a cult band because
Yeah.
that's just
Yes.
not for everyone. But
Yeah.
um Red Cross should just be like they are in Spain. Like they're
Yeah.
they're they're up there with like Pearl Jam in
Mhm.
Spain. Like why not here?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And they're still great and they're still touring
Still
and
great. Oh my God, the shows are so good.
no, and I think this movie will turn on a lot of people that don't know anything about Red Cross to Red Cross. It's going to happen. So
I
Yeah.
this year of Red Cross, they keep talking about it's going to be a couple of years of Red Cross.
I know. I want to
You
just
know,
keep it going. Like I was, obviously if you could plan this exactly right, these things might have lined up in a different kind of order with the record and the book and the movie and whatever. But I'm kind of
yeah,
feel like it just is happening the way it, will turn out to have been meant to happen. And it just does keep, it keeps them sort of in the spotlight and all these things are great. The new record is so amazing. The book I just finished and the book's fantastic and and then there's this little movie.
yeah.
This little so about this little movie, I was really curious about the distribution of it. I know that it's been finished in some form for a little while. Why are you making us wait, Andrew?
Is definitely not by choice. It is
Okay.
so hard to get distribution for a music documentary right now. I mean, it's been a heartbreaking process, honestly. Like it's just um um you know the strategy from the beginning, I had these great sort of sales agents, these guys, Submarine Entertainment, Dan and Josh Braun, who are the EPs, and they've done so many huge docs, and they came on board early because they're huge Red Cross fans and sort of sought me out. And they're like, you go the festival route, that's you start there and you get into these big festivals, and then that's what, and the buyers come, and it was like, okay, rejected at Sundance, rejected at South by Southwest, rejected at Tribeca, all of those big festivals that buyers come to all said no. So then we just, we started going another route and playing these specific music documentary festivals, Doc and Roll, Sound Unseen, and it went over huge. And the programmers of those festivals just became just sort of spreading the gospel. They were telling their other programmer friends, and all we started hearing from festivals, hey, we'd love to have it, we hear this movie's great. And the word of mouth started, and so to the point, we played a dozen or so festivals, and all along it's like, okay, well, so a distributor is going to hear about this. And we did have, we had some bigger names that were like, we love the movie, we just think it's just such a tough time for music docs right now.
Hmm.
um we lost money on this one, and we bought this, and we lost money on that, and it's just like, we just don't feel like. So it was this, the market was really tough. And then, like, Abrama Rama, who's this great company, and this guy Evan Saxon, who's just like, he's really passionate about it and he loves it, and they were the ones that are just like, let's, we think we can, really make this work. And they just had been seeing the word of mouth, because I just feel like people come out of these festival screenings and they want to tell their friends, like, it doesn't, and I hear lots of, it doesn't matter, you don't know the band, people know their music friends, and they're like, and I hear all the time, I can't believe I didn't know about this band, I feel so stupid. I'm like, that's what I wanted to make you feel. But so it's just like, look, I wish I wanted, the movie has been done for a while, and if it were up to me, it would have come out before the album and before, but it's just like, it's the business.
Yeah, it must be
I
hard.
thought,
I started keeping a list of documentaries that are out there that I haven't been able to see for years. Like there's a Lunatics one, there's a Garland Jeffries one, there's a Chelsea Hotel one, there's a Dogmatics one.
wow, there's a Dogmatics one.
Yeah, there's the Dogmatics. Now I'm not saying, I don't know if these films are
Yeah, because you haven't seen them. I
there are
know
bad
some.
documentaries. Let's put that out there. There's bad documentaries about good subjects. Joan Jett. It's not to slag films here, but
Um, I learn a lot from the bad ones. Like I did
yeah,
learn a lot, like, because I watch them all. Just like, I mean, maybe not quite, Ronnie, you probably watch even more than me, but um, even the bad where you're just like, okay, I don't want to do that. Like they did this thing, and I'm just like, I'm definitely not doing that. And I just have a long list of pet peeves, like from watching so many. And part of the process of this was just like making sure I avoid, in the process of making sure I avoided all of those pet peeves, like I ended up with a movie that people seem to like, and I like, because it doesn't have any of the things that bug me.
yeah. One thing that always bugs me, Andrew, and you didn't do it too much, is that having people in the film that weren't there talk about the band.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, very
Yeah,
little of that. I mean,
very little, very little.
like the Lindas are
Yes,
in there, but
yeah,
they're one of the few, like, not first person kind of. And that was really just feeling like, here's this other teenage punk rock, like Red Cross was kind of the first teenage punk rock band, or I don't know, maybe Eater was, but like, like the first American, uh, or I don't want to piss off any Mad Society fans out there.
it's not too
but
many.
but here's the Lindas. They're like, they're a teenage punk rock band now, and they're
Yeah,
huge Red Cross fans. And it just kind of felt like, let's have them as this, younger generations. It's not just the old timers who like this band. So I did like break that rule, because I really did try and just, it's almost, other than that, people who were
yeah,
there at these moments in the story. I didn't like load it up with rock critics and
yep.
yeah,
Members of
Lorraine.
Phoenix. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I thought it was really impactful that the Lindas were on there for that very reason, that it's not
Yeah,
a, just a band for us gray hairs, right? I mean, and they've made an impact on the next generation.
Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
and they're not just there saying, "Oh, they're great."
Yeah.
That's usually what those kind of things do.
And
Yeah.
They have funny things to say. They have funny things to say. Yeah.
I want to add into this on all of your points too, that going to your point, Andrew, about the Lindas, throughout the film, there are these moments, these touchstones where you just see Red Cross's influence and impact in so many different ways, in so many different genres. And so you're going, well, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense seeing them there. And please, Jeff, as we're talking about awards, Emmy Award winner here, but the documentary won a jury award out at Sound Unseen in 2023. So definitely, I think you've created this film that, you said at the beginning, this is a good story and there's good music here, and they need to be known. And I think this documentary really tells this story in such a way that you walk out and you say, I want every single bloody thing they've ever done, and I need it overnight. It's such a compelling story. And so hearing the way they edited it, because we've had the three of us have had this discussion before meeting with you, is, it's a very long story to tell, and you tell it in 90 minutes in a way that we all walked out satisfied, and that's no easy feat. And so that award, I mean, I think it's a start of something like, this is something really want to see and get their hands on.
Well, thank you. I got to say, I mean, that award probably meant more to me than the Emmy, if I'm being honest, because it's just like, the Emmy felt great. It was really cool. I was part of a team, I think a key player in a team, on that show, sharing that, like, I mean, this movie, this is like, I have a great producer and my editor was great, but this was I did like everything on this movie pretty much, like transcribing, I just made as a handcrafted by me kind of thing. And to have that, and it came out of the blue. I didn't even know there were awards at then. They're just like, you won jury award for best documentary. It was just like, it was so cool. I know that seems like small potatoes or whatever, the Sound Unseen Festival. It was a huge, huge moment for me. It just really meant so much. And also just all of these things it's not like, I'm not looking for the accolades. I'm not looking to become like a big documentary maker. I'll probably never make another documentary. I want this band, like, I want people to become fans, and because Jeff and Steve are just like, they're really good guys too. Like, they're just, there are a lot of bands that I love that I would not have wanted to like spend all this time in the world of that band because of the personalities involved. Some great artists are not always like great people. Like, I think of, he's dead, I guess. So now I can like say, like, as much as I love the Saints, like, it seems like Chris Bailey was kind of a jerk. Like, I don't think I would have like spent 10 years in the like Chris Bailey mind, so, but Jeff and Steve they're just lovely, smart, interesting people who, I mean, you put a microphone in front of either of them at any point and they're going to say interesting things, like, and so I think they deserve this. And they, what's great, I love hearing people like, yeah, I just, got every single Red Cross record up and just have been listening to, people that didn't know them before. But the other thing I've heard from some writer friends is just like, God, you know what? After watching that, like, I just want to approach my writing differently. I just want to have more of like a Red Cross, I don't give a fuck attitude. I'm going to do my thing and I don't care about what's popular. And I find that inspiring too. Like, they just did and continue to do their thing. And if it catches on, great. It's never been how they thought. They follow their muse, and and that really is inspiring. And just the sort of ups and downs of it, and like how many times they had to sort of pick themselves back up, and where they could have, and Steve talks, Steve's the little brother who's a little bit more of a follower, who talks in the movie about like, I would have just been a hardcore kid. Like, there's 1,000 people going to these hardcore shows. Let's be a hardcore band. Jeff was just like, forget that. Like, there's no way. Like,
We're
I'm
gonna
just
grow our
gonna,
hair out and
yeah,
go
do
the
the
opposite
exact
way.
opposite because I just don't give a shit. And it's just like, this is what I like. And so when they get a major label deal and Jeff happens to, in that moment, just be super into the 1910 Fruit Gum Company, he's just like, I'm gonna make a bubblegum record. I don't care what's this like Green River or whatever seems to be bubbling up and like this grunge thing. I don't care. I'm gonna make a bubblegum record. It's very inspirational to me. I
Yeah.
mean, truly.
No, one thing I've always said is that a mark of a great band is that you want to hang out with them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you watch this movie, you want to hang out with them.
Because
So
they're so, I mean, you got to hang out with them a ton, Ronnie, on tours
yeah,
and stuff, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they're, you
We
know,
we did some dates in Spain. It was them, the Hoodoo Gurus, and us, and we're on a bus together. So you can imagine how fun that was.
it
Um,
just must have been great, you
yeah,
know?
it didn't last long enough, but we did do that. Roy had to play double duty.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we should mention the Musk drummer Roy McDonald, also in Red Cross.
Yes.
not related to the brothers.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I drove to Austin to see Red Cross on the Neurotica tour because they didn't play Houston, my hometown. I got Roy's autograph that night, little knowing that he had
Oh my God.
become my best friend. Um, and that night, I probably told this, Andrew, I hit the cutting room floor, but it was the best intro I've ever seen. They open with, and talking to Roy, they only did this like twice. They open with the intro to Any Way You Want It by Journey.
Ah,
Any way you want it, that's where you do straight into deuce. And I was just like, oh my God. Still probably the best rock moment I think I've ever seen.
And I don't think
Yeah.
they couldn't have done it a lot because I've never seen that on all of the tapes I've gone through of
No,
Red
Roy
Cross
thought maybe they
performances.
did it
I've
at the,
never seen that, you know.
yeah, maybe at the John Anson Ford, Roy thought they might have done that. But yeah, yeah.
so
Anyway.
Andrew, we have one of the cast members here with Ronnie, and unlike the cast from Friends who demanded $1 million an episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about the cast. Was there anybody that you wanted to interview that you weren't able to, or?
Yeah, there was, I mean, I had a long wish list and like I wanted Quentin Tarantino because there's all these really interesting Quentin Tarantino connections um, because Jeff was a real frequent customer at Video Archives in Manhattan Beach, which is the video store that Quentin famously worked at. And so, just as like Quentin was getting his movie education from the owner of Video Archives, so was Jeff McDonald, and they were there a lot. And Quentin, his good friend at the time, Chuck Kelly, who worked at the video store with him, was very close. He's in the movie, and he's a very close friend of Jeff and Steven. There's all these crazy things. Like the first script that Quentin wrote was Natural Born Killers. It wasn't the first one that got made, and he asked Chuck if he would ask Steve and Steve's girlfriend at the time, Sofia Coppola, if they would play the leads in the script he had. And Chuck was like, I'm not asking Steve McDonald and Sofia Coppola to be in your stupid movie, Quentin, like whatever. So never, but in Natural Born Killers, there's three characters named Steve, Jeff, and Chuck, who are, these sort of Manson-y people who are like named after them. And evidently, and I haven't found this actual first draft, but evidently in the first draft of Pulp Fiction, Quentin wrote in for a scene that he wanted their cover of "Blow You a Kiss in the Wind" to be playing, and it was in there. It was going to be there, but the studio thought it sounded too sort of lo-fi, and so they replaced it with "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon" by Urge Overkill, which then became a massive hit. Quentin on SNL, I think, sings "Blow You a Kiss in the Wind" like on an episode. So. And I'm sure he got, whatever. We all watched Bewitched, but I think he knew that song was cool because Red Cross, made it cool. So there's all these things, and I really wanted him on to, talk about this other, and I could not get him. I'm sort of glad about this. I kind of wanted Rodney Bingenheimer, just because he played such a big part and like being the first one to play them and whatever. With all the things that have come out about Rodney, I'm kind of like, maybe I dodged a bullet there. And I did talk to him. I just like early on, I just went to Cantor's and sat down at his table and introduced myself. And I could tell he was just sort of like, he wasn't going to be a good interview. So that one was okay, but he wasn't. I think Courtney Love would have been interesting just to tell this, there's all these stories that are actually in the book about them crank calling her before she was famous, and like that they think that that's maybe why they never got to open for Nirvana, because Courtney held it against them, because they would like crank call her. And I would have loved to have gotten that real story from her. There's a long list. It turns out Henry Rollins, part of me is like, it's kind of nice to have a music documentary that's somewhat punk related that Henry Rollins isn't in. So I think that's a real badge of honor for this film.
Yeah.
I don't have Jello, Ian, or Henry, so it's a rarity. But Henry, I did get in touch with him, and he was just like, I came out to LA and I was a fan of theirs, but they were really mean to me, and I'd rather not participate.
Huh.
Which I was kind of like, oh my God, will you please just come on camera and talk about how they were mean to you? Because I'm sure they were, because they were such brats, and they would have definitely been assholes to him, because Black Flag is kind of their band. They've been at the church, in the basement of the church, rehearsing with them when Keith Morris was the singer. And, and then the next singer is Ron Reyes, who's the drummer in their band. Anyway, so, I think when Henry shows up and he looks like the jocks from Orange County who are sort of like, in their mind, ruining the hardcore scene, they would have absolutely, and I know that they were dicks to him. But I thought it would have just been so great if he would have been willing to like come on and talk about, because there's this sort of really bratty prankster, part of them certainly early on that was hard to get into the film, especially the crank calls. There were a lot of people that were just like, oh my God, they would have these crank calls and they were so funny. And it's just like, that's not really a compelling thing to put in a movie. Like I didn't have recordings of them. I didn't have anything. It's just sort of a lot of like, you had to be there kind of stories that just didn't really work for a movie. But yeah, so Henry was another one, and there were people that I thought would just maybe bring in. I know Billy Joe Armstrong is a Red Cross fan, but it wasn't, again, he's not a first person source, so it wasn't that tragic. It really was just sort of starfuckery on my part, just like, oh, maybe having the guy from Green Day will like bring in some people. But it didn't feel tragic because it's not like he can talk about being a witness to any of it at the time. Linda Blair would have been cool. There's a it was sort of because they just connect to so many different bands, and there's sort of an endless list. Like I kept adding to the list, and you could have, just Shuri Curry, like, or I don't know. There's a million people, but I'm pretty happy. Ronnie Barnett is in the movie. It's like, I mean, it's like I don't need most other people.
It's all downhill after Ronnie Barnett.
Well, I had a question about the recordings and some of the clips of some of the rehearsals and some of the shows. Was that primarily from the band themselves, or how wide of a network did you?
I mean, there was a lot of archaeology, so probably the majority of stuff came. So Jeff is more of the sort of hoarder between Jeff and Steve. So Jeff fairly early on was just like, had boxes and boxes of just undifferentiated Red Cross stuff. So he had a bunch of VHS tapes. He had like fanzines, he had fan letters. He just had a bunch of stuff, but it was all mashed together. And it took me, I just had to dig through that. And it was, I had to get a VCR and just like go through each of these tapes and take notes on, what was there. But, you'd be watching something and suddenly there's like Sofia Coppola on the Carson show that they had taped talking about being nude on the cover of Third Eye. And it's just like, I don't know if, I would have even known that existed. So there's all kinds of cool stuff. Robert Hecker, longtime guitarist, he also had a box of tapes, and he had some great stuff. And in there was something that was called the Lost Videos of Red Cross, which was a rehearsal, like a DVD of like a full rehearsal from Dave Nasworthy's rehearsal space, the NASPAD, which famously the Muffs also rehearsed in, L7. Chemical People. I think the Chili Peppers rehearsing it. But anyway, so I did it. I had that, which is a really cool thing to find. And things would turn up. There was like, remember, I was pretty, and they kept turning up. It was kind of one of the good things about this taking so long, is because amazing things would continue to turn up. And I I emailed Greg Hetson because I was like, I'd love to, when we're at the part of the story when they're talking about the band forming and Jeff McDonald and Greg Hetson being in this photography class together at Hawthorne High. I was like, Greg, do you have a high school graduation photo or something that I can use to? And then he was like, what I think I have, by the way, is my dad came to our first show at the Hong Kong Cafe and he took a bunch of slides that are in a box somewhere. I think I've got them. And it was like, uh, yeah, color slides of their first performance, opening for Black Flag at the Hong Kong Cafe. And it took, months of bugging Greg until he finally got them out and got them scanned. And so those are in the movie. And, I think they're just like, you hardly ever see color photos from that era of LA punk rock. Like it's all these black and white photographers. So it's really cool to see these color photos. Now, of course, that's famously the show that they talk about that David Bowie came to, but I guess Greg's dad didn't think it was interesting enough to like take a picture of David Bowie there, which would have been really nice. And of course, if it would have been cool if he stuck around and took some photos of Black Flag's performance, but he didn't do that either. But like, so that was like, oh my, so cool. And, so things like that would come up, but I put the word out kind of like through the Kickstarter, and some people did send me, stuff that they had shot, and that stuff's like a bunch of that stuff is in there. People were like, yeah, when they came to Bloomington, I filmed the show, and here, like, I can digitize that for you. And so yeah, and it drives me nuts because I know there's still other stuff out there that I didn't ever get to. And the most frustrating one maybe is, they talk about there's a sort of famous show where Red Cross went to Seattle in 1987 and they opened this show, or they headlined the show that Soundgarden and Green River and Malfunction were the openers, and everyone there, it's kind of like the Manchester Free Trade show with the Sex Pistols or something. Like it was really this catalytic moment for that scene. And I could not find a photograph, a bit of film. Like no one seems to have any record of it. Charles Peterson, who's the big Seattle grunge photographer, didn't like, Mark Arm and Kim Thale, all these people were putting the word out. Does anyone have anything? And a lot of documentary makers would have put in a dumb animated sequence there, but I just hate those animated sequences. And so I didn't do that. But I wish that had turned up. And I just have this feeling that, like, I mean, this movie getting out there maybe will uncover some stuff, in which case, whatever, we'll do the 5-year anniversary edition with new found footage. You can always just update these things. But yeah, to answer your question, it was just like sifting through just tons of these VHS tapes, some of which are really frustrating because, like, the show, you can tell the performance is great, but either it's degraded so much or the person didn't know how to really work the angle is just like basically like the back of someone in the crowd's head, and you're just like, and I have those of some amazing moments in the band that I just couldn't use. There's charmingly kind of lo-fi stuff, and then there's stuff that just looks like garbage.
Yeah.
Okay, I wait, Jeff. I just want to add, because Jeff and Soraya always like to tie in a Paisley Underground connection, Andrew.
Yes.
So related to what Andrew said, Matt Devine's sister provided some photos.
Yes.
For the film.
Absolutely. Yes. Betsy Devine. Yeah, that's another one of these things. I should have mentioned that. Like Matt said, hey, my sister Betsy, Matt, from your listeners probably know Matt Devine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Permanent Green Light. And he was like, my sister was at the Beach Litter Walk, which was this crazy show that like Santa Monica put on, this like litter cleanup, and we're looking for some rock bands to play, and Red Cross played in like jean shorts, and it's like the most it's like the least Red Cross they ever looked. for the show. But she also, she's got these great color photographs that we were able to use, which are just so great because whenever you can find those color shots, and it's just also so funny because even like I think a little bit later, there's the Santa Monica Pier show, which is in the Slog movie that Dave Markey
Mm.
made, and that's like we use that to open the film.
Mhm.
But even then, they're starting to like they're wearing kind of crazy outfits, like they're a mess, but they're a little bit glammy. The beach litter walk, they're just like look like beach kids in like OP, and jean shorts.
And it's Tracy Lee era. So
It's
that,
Tracy Lee, Janet
yeah,
Housen era, yeah.
yes,
So it's
yes.
just like a really cool moment
Yeah.
to have captured. Yes, it's the moment when they were an all-girl band. Aspirationally an all-girl band. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the Paisley, I mean, I guess we should talk about that since like, I mean, the connection, I feel like Red Cross never fit into any scene, so they certainly didn't fit into the Paisley Underground scene, but they certainly, they played with so many of those bands and they had such a close connection with the Bangles and, Michael Curcio, wrote the opening riff for the Faith Healer on Third Eye, which
Mm.
Jeff's already like you don't get songwriting credit when you just like write a riff, but in the liner notes he does acknowledge like Michael Curcio like wrote this riff and he's very generous about saying like that was the real germ of that song. And I guess even going back further, there's a famous Wilson Park show in Torrance. I think it was in Torrance.
Salvation Army.
Salvation Army, Red Cross with a 1D and a C, Minutemen, I think, Invisible Chains or something. Anyway, so these bands all play, and famously, right after that show was when both Salvation Army and Red Cross had to change their names, and it's a story that is still like a little bit, questionable to me, but it as the story goes, it's not in the movie because I couldn't get a good version of it to put in, but the Red Cross, somehow that show, like, the Red Cross organization found out about this band because of that show and somehow tracked Steve down at his high school or junior high and sort of told them that they had to cease and desist. And it all feels super fishy to me, and especially that the fact that the Salvation Army also got in touch with Salvation Army after that. It just seems like, was this not one of your friends that was just messing with both of these bands? I don't know. I can't prove it one way or another, but so that's another Paisley connection. Yes. But they were just sort of like adjacent to all of these scenes throughout their career. That Cavern Club scene that Roy's band, The Things, came out of. Like Steve McDonald was hanging out there all the time, and like, but it wasn't like Red Cross was really part of that scene. But all these scenes I felt like would accept Red Cross. Like it was like, Red Cross is cool. They're not like part of this, but they're cool. Like we can hang with them. They can play shows. So they could play with 45 Grave, or they could play with the Bangles, or, or play with Poison, or Faster Pussycat or whatever. Like they could kind of just move between all these scenes and yet never be really part of any of them, which is maybe why they're not, if they were really part of like that early Southern California hardcore scene, they would be probably more household names because it's like, they would, Descendants, Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Social Distortion, Adolescence, whatever. They don't get really lumped in with that. They played with all those bands, and then they don't get lumped in with the Paisley Underground, and then they certainly don't get lumped in with the hair metal bands, and then they're just kind of outside of all those different scenes.
It says a lot about them that that's the case. And I think we were addressing that a little bit earlier, especially with Jeff and Jeff's approach. And I don't want to give too much of the film away because everybody needs to see it. But Soraya and I were talking about the double D in the name and how both Jeff and Steve kind of have different thoughts about that. And Ronnie, you described this film as a love film between the brothers.
Yeah. I think because some people mention, oh, why this member mentioned, or there's not enough attention on this member. I was like, this is a love story between Jeff and Steve. You know,
Yeah.
really. And I mean, love story is obviously not a,
Not romantic,
you
but
know what I mean? Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
but absolutely. I mean, that
Yeah,
was another guiding star for me, was like, this is really the story of Jeff and Stephen McDonald. But I can't call it that. Like, but if something was important to the story of Red Cross, but not to the story of Jeff and Steve McDonald, it probably wasn't going to make it in,
Mhm.
yeah,
because it really is. It's their story. So yeah, so maybe there's a drummer or two that I left out, but it's like
yeah.
that drummer didn't have any bearing on the story of Jeff and
No,
Steve.
Mm.
And so and I do think for some people, like whatever, my older like aunts and uncles who have seen this movie, who are like in their 70s, don't know anything about this music, or they they just relate to it as a story of two brothers who have, been like business
yeah.
partners since they were, 11 and 15 years old, and 45 years later they're still, and just what that has looked like at various points, all the dysfunction and but function of
Yep.
that, and just how, you really do, I hope, get a sense of these two as people. um and because they were, especially Steve, is just willing to be so kind of raw
Yeah.
about things, and honest, you come away just feeling like, okay, I've really gotten to know these two brothers, and have a sense of what their relationship is. Because for me as a fan, it was always like, oh, Jeff and Steve McDonald, like this unit, like one word, Jeff and Steve, and like they're so different, and that really comes across, like just
Yeah.
how different they are, and yet they love so much, they love so many of the same things. So that's what keeps them, like they will just love to talk about like Ariel Bender from Mata Hoople, and
Yeah.
whatever it is, like they'll just
Yeah.
like nerd out on the same things.
And this is where the film is similar to Anvil, the story of Anvil. Everybody, sorry, Steve,
I knew you would bring it back.
but it's
It's kind of
true.
true.
It's two
Yeah.
guys. It's a love
Yeah.
story. Yeah,
It's true.
yeah,
Look, if I'm in that company, I mean, I do think Anvil is
yeah.
just like a classic of the genre.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, it
All,
definitely is.
yeah.
So watching this film and seeing all of the different talking heads that you've got included and how the story or the narrative is put together, and you were addressing this a little bit earlier, I can't imagine how much is on the cutting room floor with all the editing of this. That must have been a nightmare putting all this together, but still, you sound very passionate about the band and obviously about this project too. So it sounds like it was a good thing bringing in an editor, somebody who wasn't um,
Yeah.
so emotionally attached to this project. But that process had to have been insane.
It's very painful, and it's painful when you have one of the harder trims was, I have edited this whole section about desperate teenage love dolls, which for those who don't know, these like 16 millimeter, um, oh no, sorry, Super 8. They were shot on Super
Oh,
8.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, low budget cult films that Dave Markey directed, that Jeff and Steve were a big part of, and were huge in the 80s among punks, like, passing those around. And it's, a bunch of kids playing John Waters, and interviewed tons of people about it, have tons of material, and I was just sort of like, as I was watching the film, I was like, I feel like the film is sort of bogging down here.
oh,
It's slowing down. It's not that this isn't, but this doesn't seem like it's part of the Jeff and Steve McDonald story, because it was, Steve plays a big role in it and was very involved in it. Jeff less so. And so you were sort of losing this thread of the brothers and taking this real tangent to talk about. And so I told the editor, I was like, lift the whole section, take the whole
wow.
section out. It'll go in the special features. And
Yeah.
the first question at so many of the screenings from fans is like, how come there's nothing about Desperate Teenage Love Dolls? And it really is just because the narrative flow, looking at it as a writer, and it was just like, this is not doing anything for the story, and it'll go on the DVD. So things like that were really hard. There's also this really famous show, the Pollywog Park show, where the Red Cross as the tourists like opened for Black Flag, and it was sort of the introduction of hardcore to the masses, like this picnic of all these families just innocently going to this picnic in Manhattan Beach, and suddenly Black Flag is playing, and there's sort of a riot, and cops came and they threw all this food at them, and it's a legendary show. And I interviewed so many people about it, and I went and shot Jeff and Steve at Pollywog Park, and their friend Ella Black reads from her diaries from that day,
Wow.
and I was like, you know what? This is a Black Flag story, really. Like Red Cross played, and people kind of like them, and they did fine. And then all the crazy stuff is about when Black Flag played. It's like we got to pull this out. Like
Wow.
we lifted that whole section out, and then there's all these like legends that I interviewed. Jason Faulkner, Melanie Vamin, Chris and Jay from Sloan, Rick Agnew from Adolescence, Christian Death, like, and none of they're not in the movie because they weren't, for whatever reason, their sound bites were not necessary to the movie, even though, I have these interviews with them, and there are others too. So I think I want to put a lot of that stuff, because it's not like they're not interesting interviews. They just fell out along the way, and it's just like a lot of hard decisions, especially when I was determined to keep it under 90 minutes. Because I just seen one too many like 2 hour and 15-minute music documentary where I was like, you've just so bored me to death. Like this movie would be so much better 40 minutes shorter. And so some of that stuff, didn't make it. And some people just get in for just like a little tiny bit, like Ronnie. And
No, thank God I had that Robert Hecker story.
yeah.
I saw Robert a couple of months ago, and I said, "Are you mad at me?" First off, and he's like, "I was like, I got that story right? It's correct." He goes, "It's beautiful."
Yeah.
And then we kissed on the lips. Yeah.
Of course he did. I think he kissed me on the lips when I met him.
Yeah.
Robert, so can I ask you, like, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's been driving me nuts. So there was a Muffs show. It was at a weird space. It was the Muffs and the Dwarves,
Yes.
if I'm remembering correctly. And at the show, you announced a special guest, and Robert came and he played Love Is You with you guys, and I think maybe What They Say. And I'm just like, where was that show? It felt like it was in a weird warehouse, like on Western or something.
It was. It was on like Highland, or like you say, Western. It was like, I never heard of the place before or since.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things. Yeah.
It just was like,
it happened. Yeah.
it happened. And it was so cool because it was sort of like, I didn't know, like Robert looked like, I didn't know him by sight as a Red Cross or whatever. I was like, I didn't know. I was like, who is this guy they're bringing up? And then for a while, a second, it was just like, I couldn't place the song because I don't think Red Cross was playing at that time, maybe. And anyway, it was just really cool. It was like, oh my God, they're playing Red Cross songs. And that's the guy from Red Cross. And I just like have this vivid memory, but I just have no idea where I was. And
yeah, it would have been 92 or so. But yeah, again, that was just a one. I couldn't tell you where it was, but the show did happen.
A flyer out there somewhere. Anyway, sorry for that tangent, but I figured Ronnie would know the answer if anyone would.
Robert played Love Is You at Kim's funeral, which was nice. Yeah, which was nice. One of her two funerals. Go ahead.
I'm glad that you brought that up because we did want to comment that the film is dedicated to Ed and to Kim. So that was very touching to us, right? And of course to Ronnie. And knowing that you're such a huge Muffs fan, Andrew, that it makes sense now that why you made that dedication. That was your choice?
Yes, yeah. And I feel so lucky because that previous aborted documentary project was the director of photography was Steve Appleford, who is the one element that carried over and was my director of photography. And at some point he said, I have this footage of me interviewing him, Steve interviewing Kim, talking about Red Cross, and he's like, I don't see any reason why we can't use it. Like I shot it, and so it was like, because I was, she was certainly on my list of people to interview, and I became aware as I was like that she was sick, which I didn't know when I started this. And I think probably even if I had like gone to her first thing, I don't know the timeline whether I would have, although I maybe anyway, I wasn't able to get to interview her. But the fact that Steve had this and there's some great sound bites in her interview. And I think I would hope, I think I may just put the whole thing maybe on the DVD because it's great. I mean, there were so many sound bites to choose from that I wanted to use. She just was one of the best, like talking about them. So I love that she's in the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I got to really hear from those, from Jeff and Steve, just how much she meant to them. And so it wasn't something I really discussed with them. I was just sort of like, it just felt, it just felt right to, because if she hadn't been, she would probably have been even like more all over, the movie, because she's just such a fun interview and was so close with them and understood them. Like, Jeff McDonald doesn't have a ton of close friends, but Kim was like a close friend of Jeff's for sure. They really were tight. The fact that they wrote that, they wrote Joan Hoople, from Beyond the Door,
Yeah.
when she was really, I think she was using that device, like,
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
it's just, that's amazing. So
It's great that happened. And but yeah, that dedication, I cry. I've seen the film several times, and I always cry. And I won't give anything away, but the whole closing segment into that dedication really gets me. It's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful ending to the film.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It is like you said. I mean, it's where it comes like, this is a love story. This is
yeah,
just like
yeah,
a
yeah,
brother.
yeah.
It's a brotherly love story, and you know, um, yeah. So, and I do. There's a song that I save, because it's one of my favorite songs of theirs. I'm just like, let's save this, for the end there.
Yeah. There's a
But
great. There's a great. Kim had a great illustration on Robert. Robert had a at the NAS practice pad, as you say. My cat's grabbing it. Robert had a piece of cardboard that fit over his amp, right? And it had a cutout for the handle. And Kim wrote, I don't know if this is, you don't have to put this in. She wrote Mexican Anvil on it and had an illustration of each Red Cross member with just their hair. So you could tell, like Robert with the receding hairline and the curly hair.
Oh my God.
Jeff with the to the side. Yeah, I mean, you could tell everybody just by the hair and the outline of the face. It's a really good illustration. Yeah.
oh my God.
Does that still exist? I'm sure that's
I
long.
don't know. I don't know if Robert still has that or not, but I always used to. I love that. And if I had a cell phone at the time, I would have had a picture of it. Yeah.
Andrew, I do want to thank you for keeping it as close to 90 minutes as possible. And I think you did a great job, not attention span or anything, because I think sometimes things can run too long, and you lose, even if it's very interesting, sometimes you can lose interest. And Soraya and I were talking about, and we were mentioning this earlier, how tight like the cuts are, and how the film moves along. And Ronnie, we've talked about other documentaries where every album is covered from a band, and it's not really necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
But you do that, at least touch on almost every record, if not every record that the band puts out, and it's done so well.
Yeah, I mean, I did. The good thing is they're not that prolific, so it's not like Sparks, It's
Yeah. Yeah.
so there weren't that many, so
I
I
mean,
could
they're
kind
they're
of.
not they're not guided by voices.
No, they're not. I mean, God help us if someone would have made that, like, tried to cover every Guided by Voices record. Jesus. Yeah, I just want, like, I have this unusual background, I guess, in a way. Like, again, like, hardcore kid who then went and wrote on the most mainstream show ever, right? So my personal taste is more obscure. I like things that not everyone likes, but I'm used to writing for kind of a mass audience, and so with this, I did feel like I just want to bring like the sort of network TV writer part of me, more rather than just like the music nerd part of me that could get bogged down in things that are just for the deep heads, and so I think that, I mean, Jeff and Steve have kind of made jokes about, like, yeah, it seemed really appropriate for like a sitcom writer to tell our story. And there's, and they mean a couple things, I think, by that. One being like, they're just such fans of Brady Bunch and, like classic sitcoms. And, but also that there is a lot of kind of comedy to their story. And also, I just want, again, it's just all comes back to like, this is an accessible band. This is a band that's not really big because of the way the music business works in stupid ways. Like, not because people wouldn't like their music if they heard it. You know, even the new, it's like play Candy Colored Catastrophe from the like new record to any rock fan and just like, do you not like that? Like, do you not
Yeah.
like that? You don't like rock and roll then, you know? And you can say that from just like so many songs from their records. I get like maybe, you know, the Born Innocent record isn't for everyone.
Right. Yeah.
But once they kind of figured out how to do it, you know, by like Neurotica, it's just like, these are just, you know, these are just irresistible, poppy, catchy, heavy rock songs.
Mhm.
So that was, I just wanted the film to just move. Like anytime, I'm just able to put myself in that viewer. I'm just like, I'm bored. You know, like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm getting bored here. This is like, cut it, like move faster. Like just don't dwell in this moment. Just like keep moving. Now we're on to the next thing. Oh my God, I'm just still trying to like,
Yeah, right.
process the crazy Francis Ford Coppola story. Well, now we're on to another crazy story. And now
Yeah.
we're like, and we're just gonna keep that going was just like what we tried to do.
Thank you for being vicious.
Yeah.
Well, it's great, Andrew. You did great. There's been no bad reviews.
I,
I
I
predict there'll be none. Congratulations. The film's actually going to open, people,
it's
and
gonna open. It's gonna
everyone's going to get to see it. Yeah.
hopefully come somewhere. So yeah, people should um go to redcrossfilm.com and sign up for the email list. And then also we'll be putting all the like places it's screening up there. And that'll be the best way. Plus, I'm really bad at social media, but I now have a social media person who's like handling the Born Innocent Red Cross accounts and doing a good job. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's the best way to follow where the screenings
Yeah,
will be.
I would say, social media is a good way. I think we're Born Innocent Red Cross or Born Innocent Red RK, I think on Twitter, but that's but redcrossfilm.com will be like once these things ticket links start going up, you'll be able to it'll all be right there. And
And
I'm
we'll
going to
sh
try and send an email kind of blast out to everyone who signs up for that email list once I learn how to use MailChimp.
and we'll share that too, Soraya, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And for the listeners, as we mentioned a while ago, Rama picked up the film, and from what I read in Variety, worldwide distribution. So this is not just US, but you should be able to see it in a lot of places around the world, which is exactly how it should be.
Yeah, we're working on that. I'll say the very first time the movie screened with an audience was in Barcelona with Catalan subtitles. That was the first time I got to see it in the theater, and it was so cool. Like I mean, I think they speak enough English there that they were kind of reading it, but getting it. Obviously the band is just so huge in Spain. But hopefully there'll be more screen. We'll be working on a bunch of European, Canadian screenings. Yeah, it's going to be a slow rollout, but we're going to try and get close to where most of the fans are.
One last thing before we let you go, Andrew. You've talked about DVD extras, and it's a little premature. So there is you expect to have a DVD at one point?
Yes, for sure there will be. I can't, and the poor Kickstarter supporters have been like waiting for so long. Although some Kickstarter supporters are just like, I gave you $10. Like, why isn't my movie done like 7 minutes later? And my DVD wasn't everything. It's just like, this is hard work, people. But yes, there will be a DVD and there will be a bunch of stuff. I have like this massive list of possibilities and I'm not going to be able to do it all. And there are certain practicalities, like I have to pay an editor to edit all these things for these special features. And, but I'd like to get up to whatever the capacity of a Blu-ray or DVD is with special features, because there's so much. And what's interesting too is, there's the book, which every Red Cross fan, now you're one of us, the book they wrote with Dan Epstein, everyone should get. But I just finished reading it. And, Steve all along has been saying like, what's not in the movie is in the book, but not everything is in the book. Like, now I know, okay,
Yeah.
you covered a lot, but I've got material that you didn't cover that could be in the special features. So yes, there will be Blu-ray, DVD. I can't say when. What we're focused on now is getting the movie out for, theatrical distribution. And then the next thing I will turn to is like, okay, let's decide. I already know Desperate Teenage Love Dolls, Pollywog Park, some of the interviewees who didn't make it. Like I want to put a lot of that reunion show with the original lineup where they, did that whole Posh Boy EP. Like I've got that whole show. I've got some other cool shows that I can put, more of that up there. There's a lot that we will put on there.
There's a lot of room on a Blu-ray, Andrew. So,
Yeah.
just saying. Not a DVD necessarily, but a Blu-ray.
Blu-ray, yeah. Well, maybe we'll just push it to the limits of the DVD. You're gonna get people get their money's worth. I'll just say that. Yeah.
Great.
But I don't know when.
We love the film, and we really want to appreciate the time that you take to talk about this project with us, because we're huge fans of the band and we're huge fans of this documentary. You did an amazing job with it, and thanks so much for taking time to talk to us about it. We appreciate it.
Oh my God, but this was really fun. Thank you guys for keeping the Paisley Underground alive. And Ronnie, thanks for moving to Sacramento. And
Andrew, I know I got no connections I got no connections for movie theaters here.
I know. I'll miss running into you at shows.
You'll see me sometimes. You'll see me sometimes.
So. Yeah. All right. This was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
So many things I wanted to say, but I kept myself from saying it because I didn't want to reveal too much about the documentary.
Yeah.
But this is a film worth seeing. And now talking to Andrew, I'm fully on board. This is a story that needs to be told. And I think he really respected the band and told it in such a way that, we talked about it as like, expert, knowledgeable, and then like novice. We all saw the same film and we all got something out of it, and that's hard to do with a music documentary sometimes.
Yeah. And obviously it can only be a labor of love, the way he had to work so many years and no funding and, and so it truly was a labor of love. I'm glad we made it clear at the beginning, like we weren't going to share too many, because that would be so easy to do. There's so many things we could talk about in this film.
Yeah,
1,000%.
And we'll do that off camera.
Yes, we will.
But I think at the core of it, and Ronnie, you said it so succinctly.
Hi, Julie.
Julie.
And we saw
political.
the sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That is so
Sorry
fun.
to bring politics and racism.
No.
To the,
honey, we're all battle weary at this point.
No, I know. I'm sorry.
But
Go ahead.
I think you said it really well at the beginning when we were talking with Andrew. This is really a love story between these two brothers.
Yeah.
And this story's got everything. I mean, this is not a straight line. This story goes all over, and it does have all the elements of a really compelling story.
Yeah.
And at the center of it are these two brothers who stood by each other, sometimes when it was difficult to do, stood by one another, and then just put out an album, recently put out an album.
Yep.
Still performing. Book came out. We've got this documentary. I mean, what more do you want? And they seem super hungry to keep going.
No, they've toured more. The album came out in June, I believe. I believe it was June or late May. And they've been on tour ever since, more or less. They're in Europe as we speak. They're in Spain as we speak. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And you couldn't, as I've seen Steve say in many interviews, like, I wish I could say it was calculated like this with a book, a movie, and an album and a tour, but that's too much to coordinate at once. So like Andrew said, I kind of like that it's elongated All right. The movie, yeah, just trickling out. The book just came out. Hopefully we can get the book soon in the US. That's another story. Um,
Indeed,
yeah,
indeed.
but yeah, it's a great story, and we said it over and over, hammered it home, but the hour and a half, it's there's no lags. It's and again, it doesn't, yeah, not getting to every. There's a lot of extra stories, you know, related to Red Cross that you know aren't addressed. But like Andrew said, all that industry, background of his, led
Yeah.
him to know this is dragging down the film. I'm going to cut it out. It's great. It's part of the story, but doesn't move it forward.
It's
So
really interesting to me as we were talking to him, the fact that he did come from that background of being a producer, writer in Friends, right? Probably the biggest sitcom of all time, arguably one of, if
yeah,
not the. And that perspective and that experience that he brought to a music documentary was interesting to me. That part of the discussion where he was bringing that kind of background and approaching it and bringing out the funny parts of the McDonald brothers, but not making it cheesy and not making it a comedy, right? So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I thought it was really interesting him having that background. And I was going to tell him, but I can tell you guys that one of my coworkers has a friend quote for every single situation that comes up. So, I mean, that fan base is insane, right? So,
Oh,
um,
absolutely. Yeah,
but bringing that experience that he had from that industry into making this documentary, I thought was really interesting. I didn't think of like coming from that approach, but thought that was interesting.
yeah. No, he's a good guy, uh,
Yeah.
and he made a great film, and he stuck with it. God, I mean, all the obstacles he's talking about. I mean, there are a lot of docs, and there's only so many avenues for these things to go.
Mhm.
Right? You hope to get on that theater circuit, and you hope to sell it to basically one of two or three channels.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
um, Jello
I'm
Biafra has a great quote where he's like, "Whenever I'm asked to do a documentary, I say, just to get it finished." He's like, "Just interview me last," because so many of these films get started and don't get made. And I've done interviews for a lot of them that haven't gotten made either. Um, you know, so glad the film has landed somewhere,
Yes.
Yes.
and yeah, it's gonna slowly kind of play theaters, and not just. And when he's saying theaters, it doesn't mean just these rock festivals. Like
No.
it's gonna do a week in certain cities, and then it's gonna, you know, everyone will be able to stream it eventually, you
Yeah.
know. But it's getting there. That's great.
So
I'm very proud.
did you have to join the SAG in order since now you're gonna be on the big screen?
Jeff, I've been in SAG for 19. Come on.
All right.
Uh,
I've been there for years, kid. Waiting on my shit.
All
I
right.
used
All
to
right.
get mailings from SAG. I don't know. I actually don't know my status at this point.
Oh.
If anybody knows how to work on an IMBD page, please fix mine. Add a nice picture. Things are spread out. Not everything's there.
Nice, nice.
That being said, talking about SAG, and I mean, and obviously Ronnie Barnett's appearance in this film.
Mhm.
Okay. I was so impressed with the amount of people from the beginning that he got in bands that we all know,
Yeah.
people who agreed to be in this film, be a part of it, and share a story, share anecdotes. And I mean, from the punk world and on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I want to. There's a story I want to share, and I can't right now. And oh Lord,
Yeah.
and it involves just how much people were listening to the music that perhaps they wanted to emulate the sound.
Hmm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that's just
Yeah.
a thought. That's
Yeah.
something I took from it. All right, guys, I gotta ask you. Do you agree with Jeff or Steve on the two D's in Red Cross?
I go with Jeff on that.
Yeah,
I like it.
I
Yeah.
gotta go with Jeff too. I gotta go with Jeff too. So,
I thought
but
I just thought it was funny that it pops up
yeah,
often.
and it
It's like
doesn't.
but that's a true sibling
Mhm.
discussion, right? If you
Yeah,
guys can't like, hey, remember when that happened, that thing? I'm still thinking about it.
Okay.
yeah,
Crack me up because it was at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end.
yeah,
There's a lot of sibling discussions
Yes.
between those two. And
yeah.
I'm talking that didn't make the film.
Oh, y-
But yeah, no, maybe it's just because we know it. That's all we've known is the Red Cross with the 2Ds. It just seems
Right.
right. But like
mhm.
Jeff is, again, not pointing out quotes from the film. I'm not going to do it.
But I want to know who's the snitch? Who's the snitch that gets something from like a teeny tiny show in California back to like corporate offices of Red Cross?
Yeah, well, you know who
Same
else was played?
with the people who snitched on Salvation Army.
You
I'm
know
like,
who else played on that bill? Soraya.
are you talking about the Wilson?
Peer group with our friend Lena. Maybe it was her.
Hell no.
Oh.
Hell no. She's a rebel. She's like, yeah, no.
That's funny.
Well, she might know at least.
I don't know, but whoever the snitch is, you know who you are. I hope you sleep. You don't sleep at night.
Well,
But we got a badass name out of it, Red Cross. And
I
then
think it's fortunate that both bands that happened earlier in their career. I think, to be
Right.
honest, because
Right.
it could have been a lot worse. So
you know, something else that's in this film, and I mean, Andrew mentioned it, is this evolution of sound is such a compelling story because Jeff McDonald is just he's not. I don't know if it's energy or like anxiety or whatever. Just never want to sit still in one thing. Like he was constantly, maybe it's his musical taste. He was just fed new things, and he's like, let's try this. Okay, let's try that. And this band just keeps growing, and that is really cool to see. Like, and they're not just kind of stuck in a rut. Jeff McDonald was just unafraid, and I think that's something that for people who don't know too much about the band, I think it's a pretty cool thing um that gets its due mention in the film.
yeah,
Yeah. Soraya, earlier I was telling you, I feel like he was punk to the punks. So
Totally.
like he punked out the punks in a lot of cases. I mean, when everybody was going skinhead, he wants to go long hair. So he was like, so I think he was more punk than some of the punks in some ways, in attitude, if nothing else.
there's very little more punk than that package that Andrew received at the radio station with Team Dave Monsanto and White Flag's record. Yeah. On Gasatanka Records.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right, you guys. Well, Ronnie,
Yeah.
thanks for making this happen.
Yes, thank you.
It wouldn't
Of
happen
course.
if it wasn't for you. So I know
Ah,
being a star, probably the star of the film. Let's be
Totally.
honest.
thank you. Yeah, that film it'd be nothing without my little 2 bits in there. Let's face
And
it.
Boom, 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 boom.
Boom Boom Room is immortalized.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Forever on film.
On the
Oh
big
yeah, I wanted to
screen.
point out seeing Andrew's office there. I thought that was Mike Dalkey's room, but it was Andrew's office. My friend Mike Dalkey, who has some great stuff in the film.
Okay.
Somewhere around the farmers market, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
office building near the farmers market. So,
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
but thank you for making this happen, Ronnie.
Of
Appreciate it.
course. No,
Yes.
thanks for having me as usual, and always fun. And
Always. All right, Jeff, Ronnie, as always,
Yep.
amazing, fantastic, mi gente. Agrubiar.
Groove on, Paisley people. Ronnie?
exactly what you said, both of you.
Hey, Good to see
Hey,
ya.
what's up, everybody? Good to see you.
Woo-hoo. You ready
Lots,
to talk some Red Cross?
yes, lots happened since we were all together. The Dodgers beat the Padres.
Yeah, killed the
I
pod.
believe that happened.
You're
They
being
didn't kill
generous.
him.
You
They
guys
didn't
are
kill
being
him.
generous
It was competitive, Jeff. You know,
It was.
for a
Hell
little
yeah.
bit. All right,
but
should we
they're
let him?
such dicks. Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.